Hey, Deke here, with a special preview of one of my exclusive offerings on my Patreon at patreon.com/DekeNow. Now, for many, Patreon's a way of supporting a valued content creator and keeping them going. I'm not too proud to say that I'd like that too, but in return, I'm providing you with exclusive video content that you're not going to find anywhere else. I'm calling them Deke Dives. Isn't that cute? And so for every one video that I post to my YouTube channel, I post at least one, sometimes 2, 3, or 4 videos on my Patreon. By way of example, I've got a special preview of one of my favorites. I call it Strawberry Letter 21, in which I show you how to create this absolutely from scratch using text set in Illustrator. Why, hello again. Welcome to part 6 of my comprehensive introduction to the vast and highly graphical world of 3D materials in Illustrator. Now, as you may or may not know, one of Adobe's big initiatives at the moment is a thing called Substance 3D. Google it, which allows you to create and download material assets. It's part of a 2019 acquisition of Algorithmic. Very cool stuff, but it's a whole nother thing, a whole nother subscription plan. And so we're going to step right around that. What really matters as an Illustrator user is that you have access to a subset of Substance 3D, which allows you to load and use additional free materials as SBSAR files. And that acronym, by the way, stands for Substance Archive. And while this may sound like a really super wonky topic, it's going to allow us to take these 3D editable letters once again and turn them into this. Hope you brought your peanut butter, because this is the jam. Now, I'm so fond of this one that I'm going to create it entirely from scratch, starting with this text set in Trajan Pro 3, a very overused font, of course. It's available to you on Adobe fonts if you're so inclined. And so I'll just go ahead and select this text with my black arrow tool, make sure that the 3D and materials panel is up on screen. Switch to the object tab up there in the top left corner. Turn on extrude, of course, and I'm going to go ahead and set the depth to 100. Why don't I? And then you can rotate this guy around if you like. I want to be able to see the tops of the letters, but I did come up with some specific values, as you might imagine. I'll go ahead and set the X value to 172, set the Y value to 148, and then I took the Z value and set it to 176, negative 176, pardon me, 0.5. I just wanted to make sure those letters were straight up and down. And then I set the perspective value to 40. All right, so that's pretty much everything I did here, with the exception of turning on bevel, of course, because that way we can see the highlights better. And I'll go ahead and change the shape to round. Width and height values of 50% as by default are just fine. All right, now let's switch over to the lighting tab up here, and I'm going to crank this intensity value all the way up to 180. So not subtle at all. I'll take the rotation value down to 20 degrees. The idea is that I'm kind of uplighting the letters, as you can see right there. I'm going to leave height set to 45 degrees. I'll take the softness value up to 70%. And then I'll take the ambient light, I'll leave that on, and I'll take the intensity down to just 10% so that we have a high degree of contrast. We'll come back to the shadows later. For right now, I'm just going to leave them off. All right, now let's go to materials up here at the top. And notice that we've got all materials and graphics. You have to have that spun open like so. And then we've got what we saw before, right? Adobe Substance materials. Those are the materials that ship along with Illustrator. But then we've got this other thing right here called Your Materials. It may change, by the way. This stuff has been in flux. And that contains materials that you find elsewhere, these SBSAR files. And to get to them, you click on this little icon right here. Notice that? In my case, it's not really working right now. And if that happens to you, then you just want to navigate your way to this site. Again, URLs can always change, but right now it's substance3d.adobe.com/assets. And then you go to all assets and you navigate your way to the free assets. Notice there's relatively few of them. You can go to other assets, there's just gobs. There's like 15,000 assets right now. But to get to most of them, you have to pay a separate subscription. Grr, I say to that. So it's not enough to be a Creative Cloud subscriber. You've got to pay even more. Isn't that nice? Anyway, this is the guy I found right there, Car Iridescent Paint. And so any of these that are free, you can just download. Click the download button. You will download an SBSAR file. Just keep track of where you put it. And then return yourself to your beloved Illustrator right here. And what you want to do is click on this little plus sign. That's the way it works right now. I just want to make sure you understand this panel's been kind of all over the place. But right now you click on the plus sign and you choose Add Materials. And then you go find that SBSAR file you just saved and you load it on up. And it will appear, at least for me, in your materials, which is, in my case, my materials. But, you know. And I'll go down here, and there's Car Iridescent right there, Car Iridescent Paint. And I'll just go ahead and click on it to apply it. Now, this is quite the material. So even though I'm not ray tracing this file, it does take a moment to apply. And notice that we have the usual resolution and repeat options right there. I'm going to ignore them and go down to color, and I'll click on that color swatch. And the only change I'm going to make is to change the hue value right there to 260 degrees, which puts me in deep blue, sort of purple territory. Click OK. And now notice, I'll just go ahead and scroll down here. We have some other options that you can work with. Notice these little guys here. They're flakes, by the way. And I want them to go down a little bit. So I'm going to reduce my flake scale value. And then I'll tab my way down to flake density. Now, if you reduce that value, it seems like we have more flakes than we had before, and they're bigger, which is why I went ahead and increased the value to its maximum of 1. I do want to have as much flake scale variation as possible, so they're all different size. So I just went ahead and took flake scale variation up to 1 as well, which brings us to roughness right here. Now, notice if I take roughness all the way down so that we have as much shine as possible, the shine kind of overwhelms the detail. We're really not seeing much in the way of the flakes anymore. So what I did was I clicked in the roughness value and I pressed Shift up arrow a total of 3 times there to take that value up to 0.3 like so that we're roughing things up, but we still got a lot of shine and we can really see those flakes. Then what I decided to do was move way down the list. Notice you got a ton of options where this specific material is concerned. You can go nuts assigning different colors if you wanted to, but I really like the technical parameters because there's shortcuts like crazy, right? So what I just decided to do, I played around with them, but I ultimately decided to Hue Shift this guy, which allows you to select from all kinds of different color schemes with a single slider. So you don't have to play around with each and every one of those color stops. Ultimately, I came up with a Hue Shift value of 0.25, which gives me this wonderful red right here. Now, if you like, at this point, you can check things out by clicking this down pointing arrowhead in the top right corner of the panel, and I'll go ahead and turn on ray tracing right there. I don't want a quality of low or medium. I want high. I am turning off reduce noise. Notice if I click on raster settings that I have the resolution set to 150 ppi, so medium. Happens to work out really well for these flakes. So I'll go ahead and click OK, and then I'll click render, and I'll wait for the progress bars as usual. And then in a fullness of time, we see this beautifully rendered artwork. Now, what does it still need? It still needs shadows. So I'm going to go ahead and click on lighting up here at the top. I'll turn off ray tracing for a moment. So switch to the real-time preview. And then I'm going to go ahead and turn the shadows on. And we end up with these shadows that are behind the object. Remember, I don't know if you've been watching all of these, but I've made fun of this position option right here because I'm not clear whether behind should be called below or below should be called behind. This time around, I gotta say though, if you choose below object, the shadows appear below the object. And this becomes even more clear if I take the distance value up to 5%, so that shifts those shadows downward below the object. And I'll also take the shadow bounds value up to 100% is going to be fine. And sure enough, I owe the good people at Adobe a huge apology, because that is definitely a shadow that is below the object, which is going to become even more clear if I just go ahead and click on the ray tracing icon right there. And then again, you're going to have to wait. You're going to have to wait even longer this time, because after all, now you've got shadows. But what's interesting is it really changes the appearance of the lighting on the face of the letters. And see what I mean by that? We've got all this reflection going on here, which is largely a result, I should mention this, I'll go back to materials. It's largely a result of this roughness value right here that I took up to 0.3. So, definitely get in there and experiment is what I mean to say with those options. At this point, I'll go ahead and press Control-Shift-A or Command-Shift-A on the Mac to deselect the letters. I decided that gradient in the background was just too dull, which is why I replaced it with this Freeform gradient right here. And that, my friends, is how you can work some real 3D material magic by loading and using SBSAR files. So you get my inspiration? Shuggy Otis, Brothers Johnson, a present from you, Strawberry Letter 22. Well, a present from me, a special bonus movie in the form of this right here. How to create a perfectly formed, shiny, metallic 3D sphere. I'm Deke McClellan. This is Illustrator Now.